Welcome to the Grit and Grow podcast, where we talk to guests who are pursuing excellence in both sport and life, who encourage and motivate us to become better mentors, coaches, parents, and athletes. My name is Shane Sowden, head men's basketball coach at Briarcrest College, and also your co-host.
And my name is Justin Simpkins, co-host and director of Prairie Hockey Academy. Welcome back to the Grit and Growth podcast. On today's episode, we have Jordan Bokser with us from Spoken Nutrition. Jordan does a deep dive into holistic health, supplements that he views as magic, and into formulating and building a brand new brand of hydration products. His big takeaway for me was that sleep will improve it. Whatever it is, sleep will improve it.
Yeah, Justin, and I think this is such an important conversation for us to have. And Jordan was a wealth of knowledge, and it's really important now more than ever what we're putting into our body. And I think there's so much non-good information out there, for lack of a better term, and Jordan brings it and just educates on the supplement world. And yeah, this is a must listen for anybody who's supplementing or knows people that are supplementing, especially if it's your kids who are student athletes right now.
Yeah, enjoy the episode as he walks through his journey of even emotional and mental health, striving to become who he is today. Welcome to today's Grit and Growth podcast. Jordan, excited to have you join us all the way from Ontario. You have an incredible background and a bit of a story to talk to us about. I think a story that talks about both grit and growth in your resilience of, who you are becoming and the companies that you're building and the athletes and the professional athletes and people that you are supporting today. But let's get started a little bit. Tell me about, where you grew up, and let's fast forward right from there to, an industry that you started in before you got into supplements.
Yeah. So I grew up in Richmond Hill, Ontario, which is like a small town outside of Toronto. And when I was in university, I actually thought I was going to be a professional MMA fighter or Muay Thai fighter. So funny you brought up athletics. Yeah. I was obsessed with Rocky as a kid.
Nice.
Combat sport was the only sport I actually really enjoyed because it was really difficult for me to be part of a team because of the fear of letting everybody down. Whereas when I was by myself, the only person I could let down is me. So I was able to excel a little bit more when I was doing like my combat sport training. And I was in second or third year uni. I was taking environmental science. And, obviously I was like, I need something in case the professional fighter thing doesn't work out. And I thought I was either going to be an environmental lawyer or I was going to sell clean energy securities and raise money for companies doing like green energy. That's what I thought I was going to do. And I went away for my mother's 50th birthday. We went on a cruise. I had the energy to go to school full-time, train full-time, bartend on the weekends, and have an internship at a finance company. So I had like unlimited energy. I could just, anything I wanted to do, I could do. And then I went on this cruise, and on the drive back, because we drove to Florida and we came back, I dropped 12 pounds. And it was like some random weird illness hit me and I was never the same, or it took me a while to get back to it. So I went from being able to manage all those things, and you talk about like getting set off course, to like, I couldn't stay awake longer than 3 hours. So when I first did so the way it works in Canada, if you want to sell stocks, you have to do something called the Canadian Securities Course.
Yep.
So I did part one. I got like 88 or 89%. To pass, you need to get 60%. I couldn't pass part two. I did part one previous to that trip. Part two, I tried, and I kept failing. So I went to my doctor because if I had a medical reason, they'd give me another chance to write the test. And I visited the doctor 51 times in a year. So I was basically in and out like every week trying to figure out what was going on with me. Luckily, my father is close to, or he used to be a lot closer to him, but now the guy's sort of like just retired off. He was a medical doctor, naturopath. He was like the first one in Canada to really get it. He was older back then. He was in his 60s. So I went to him, and he was like, you have leaky gut, you have parasites, you got to cut out gluten and dairy. And I'm like, what are you talking about? This was like before everyone was doing it. So I took it that like, okay, I got to cut gluten out. I got to go, and I'm lactose intolerant. And I would like eat a bunch of like soy ice cream and like lactose free ice cream, like, thinking that was adjusting. So he sent me off to a Chinese medicine doctor, like a traditional Chinese medicine doctor. And I would say he took me from like a 30% vitality up to like 80. And I started to get my life back. And then I knew at that point, I was like, this is what I have to do for a living. So I graduated school. I got a job selling wireless internet. This company called Terrago. And it was a good job to learn sales, but like not my passion. And then I found a company called Soroil, which at the time was the largest professional nutraceutical company. So they would sell specifically to like naturopaths, chiros. And I applied, and the CEO was like, nah, you're not the right fit. You don't have any background. So I sent an email every month, literally like clockwork, being like, is there a position open yet? Is there a position open yet? And then I think month 9 or month 10, he's like, okay, we'll hire you. So that's how I got into the industry. And I haven't looked
Wow.
back. That was like 2012. So about 13 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I got there and I like absorbed as much knowledge as I could, and I became obsessed. I viewed supplements as like real life magic. Because they fixed me, and I could see like the more I learned and the more I'd recommend it to people, like they would see benefits. And that really started that's where I found my passion. And then I've been into this ever since. Like the sports stuff, which I got into later, happened because I got introduced to Charles Poliquin. But originally when I started in this space, it was about the functional medicine, natural side of health, which especially in 2012, like no one really knew about. Like Dr. Oz started talking about it a bit more, but it was still very, very fringe.
I think there's a lot here. I'm interested in a couple pieces. I'm really curious about, even before I go down the functional medicine,
Mm-hmm.
a naturopath side of even how you mentioned you viewed supplements as magic because you recognized it wasn't, I guess it wasn't a viral disease or sickness, but
I don't know.
you were struggling, right?
Yeah.
And it took a lot of visits there. But what really I'm curious about at the start of it was you were a combat fighter
Mm-hmm.
because of fear in your life of letting others down.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess for me in that regard, inside of a team sport and inside of team sales now, is fear still playing a role in that, or what's where's that at today?
So I have a I have a small coaching business on the side that was really just a passion project for me because um, I've probably invested, I'm going to say $250,000 in my health and self development between like what I went through then and then some other stuff that happened like back in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I think all issues stem from a fear of abandonment.
Okay.
So I think like no matter like unless we hit nirvana or we become enlightened in this lifetime, I think that everybody has some level of fear of being abandoned, and that can unravel in different ways. Like fear of being alone for some people is a huge fear, or the flip side, like me, it was like fear of letting people down, which means like I would open up, let people in, and then I'd let them down and I'd be alone. So it's like the same fear I think lives with all of us no matter what we're doing. Um, and I like to look at words and see what they mean. And like, you look at the word alone and you piece it together, or sorry, you break it apart and you're left with all one. So like, I think we're all one. So it's impossible to be alone, but our human programming um, makes us feel the threat of being alone at all times. So a lot of people don't know this, but in medieval times, do you know what the greatest punishment a pope could give was?
Well, probably similar to what they would do in a penitentiary with isolation.
Right.
Would that be right?
Excommunication was the worst
Excommunication.
punishment. It was worse than death. So beheading
Yeah.
and death was one step below the severity of excommunication.
Yeah. Sounds like a John Wick excommunicado kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably where they got it from. But yeah, exactly. Actually. So to answer your question, do I have that fear? I think I always have that fear. I just think the relationship to the fear changes as you age.
So my question is, if you're open with sharing, like could you share with us where that stemmed from? Was there a time in your life where you felt that abandonment that affected you as you got older?
Yeah, I think, the obvious one would be like my parents divorced when I was 3. But I think we go through many instances in our life. Like I believe we're all Pavlovian dog responses to a certain extent. So our lower self or our subconscious gets programs and it's trying to protect us, but it learns a lesson when we're younger. And then it looks for ways to prove that lesson right over and over again in our life. I think we have the ability to shift it, but it's it takes like time, energy, consciousness, and focus to shift that. So yeah, there are many times in my life I think where I felt this, and it's like I think when you step in your stage of a more conscious lifestyle, just more awareness, you can start to shift what that is.
So
Does that make sense?
self-awareness, yeah, I think it does. Self-awareness is a really important piece for all of us in our life, an inside-out approach to be so understanding the deep ins and that healing journey. You said you spent a lot of resources, time, and money on a healing journey, and I think a big piece of functional medicine and health that I read today isn't just physical; it's also emotional well-being and health, that they tie together a lot. And so in your journey, can somebody be just physically well and healthy and emotionally a wreck, or how do those tie together?
I think everyone has a certain level. Like Chinese medicine has like these ideas of like you have a certain amount of kidney yin, which is like, or kidney yang, which is like your life force energy. I think we all have a certain level of like resiliency we were born with. I think the food you eat, the training you do, all that helps. But stress is stress, whether it's eustress or distress. And I think at a certain point, you will go through a rude awakening if you do not start to clear the emotional baggage. So you could be extremely healthy on what you're eating and your routine, and you're dialed into your training and everything. But if you don't nurture the emotional, spiritual side, I think disease will find you, is what I believe, or dysfunction will find you. Because if you're every day waking up with anger, so in Chinese medicine, they believe every organ has an emotion it's tied to.
Okay.
So liver is tied to anger, lungs is tied to depression, kidney is tied to anxiety, spleen is tied to like utter fear and panic, heart is tied to hastefulness, like not being able to slow down in its dysfunctional state. So I'm not saying that they figured everything out 3,000 years ago, but like you do look at people and it's like, okay, so people who have a heart attack, do they tend to be calm, patient human beings? No, most of the time, right?
They don't. Yeah.
No, their blood pressure's high. They're okay. People who, sigh all the time, and I don't know what the correlation is here, but like people with like depression, like you can see it, like they're sighing. They don't have necessarily the most amount of cardio. Like there's almost a heaviness to them with their lungs. Liver issues, like think of all the people who have liver issues, like how angry are they either internally or actually externally. So that's and again, I don't think they're 100% science, this old school way of looking at it with TCM, but I do think something is there. So until you clean up that internal world, you're causing damage to your body. It's just how long you have is, I think, based on a couple different factors.
There's lots of writings on this, and I think I had seen a book or something, I think When the Body Says No, and it's like the hidden signs of stress disease connection. And I've read a lot of this in the past and seen some. So,
or The Body Keeps Score, I think, is another one.
Body Keeps Score, right? Yeah, I think that was one, right?
And you know what's funny is Charles would talk about this. Everyone thought Charles was like really, really just science-based, Charles Poliquin, but he would bring up a lot of things about like your emotional state and how it will affect performance. And
right.
Yeah.
Hey listeners, Shane here. A few years ago, my wife and I purchased a new home, and we were really excited to move in, but it needed one thing. We were unhappy with the basement. We needed a major renovation. We wanted a space where us and our 3 grown boys would want to spend time together. Hang out, play games, watch a game, but most importantly, just be together. That's when we called Speargrass homes. They were professional, detailed, but most importantly, you could feel they genuinely wanted to get the space right for us. Not just a nice looking basement, but one that worked for us. One where we wanted to be, and one where we wanted to be together, and invite others to be together with us. Now it's our favorite spot in the house. We all hang out there. We've even had the boys basketball team over for some team building. Anyways, if you're looking to transform some space at home into a place people actually want to be, Speargrass gets it. They do renovations, new homes, windows and doors, all sorts of projects. And with, most importantly, integrity. Trustworthy, thoughtful, easy to work with. You can find them at speargrasshomes.ca. SPEARGRASSHOMES.ca. Jordan, I'm curious with the whole. So you're in the supplement world of like taking action, taking care of your body, putting good things in, not and keeping bad things out. For health, we're this emotional, mental, psychological piece is so massive. And I in my dealings, coaching young men, and just some small groups that I'm in with men my age, hardly talk about that side of things, like the mental, emotional, the trauma, that kind of stuff. And we're dragging that in. And a lot of guys my age, I'm 46, they're not healthy. And they think, well, if I just go to the gym more and eat better, I'll be good.
Yeah.
Make some progress. How do you enter those conversations of encouraging people to deal with this other side of things that's a little harder to pin down?
I think everyone gets brought to outside of like a tragic accident taking your life. I think everybody will get met with the need, like they'll be forced. Life will force them to address it. I'm trying to think of the name of the theory. It's like reality bursting theory or something. It's like something will happen. It's a divorce, a business goes bad, loss of a part, like something happens to you that you're going to be forced to look inward. And, I worked with, it could be like, it depends on who. I was working with one athlete. He was a combat athlete. He was ranked 10th in the world in jiu-jitsu, like a monster. Everything was going good in his life, but he couldn't find a girlfriend. And it's like, this doesn't make sense. You're like 6'6", your abs pop through your rash guard. And we went into, we did some breath work and meditation with him. And it turned out his like mom gave him to his aunt. And then his mom took him again when he was like 9. So he built this whole story that if he gets close to a woman, she's just going to leave him. And then we cleared it. And then a week later, he found a girlfriend. It was like just quick. And that's just like one example, right? Like, we have all these different aspects of our life. But I do think there's more people open to having the conversations because you can't run away from them as much as you used to. I think it's so in your face today because there's a really good book called Gap in the Gain. And he basically, the author Brian Hardy, talks about how like there's two ways to look at things. Like, let's say you have $0 in your bank account and your goal is to get $100,000. At 50,000, are you focusing on the $50,000 gain or are you focusing on the $50,000 gap? And a lot of us will live in that gap. We don't actually look at how far we've come. So comparison is the theft of joy. And we live in a world right now where comparison is like, we didn't have Instagram 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or a parent, like your only way of comparing was like maybe the show of the rich and famous on like NBC or whatever show that, or whatever station.
Oh man, I remember that. I used to watch that all the time.
Right. That was like your one, or like
Not expect that to come up.
No, what's it called? Like the Cribs or whatever. Now you go on Instagram.
Cribs. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now you go on Instagram and you're met with a consistent bombarding of like all aspects of your life being compared. So it's like, maybe you'd look at your neighbor before and compare your relationship. Well, now you have all these people online curating the best parts of their life in a very specific message. So that wound or that irritation, I think, gets aggravated more now. So we're forced to look at it. It's like you can't run from it anymore unless you go live in some like rural area where you just completely disconnect from the world. It's like you have to address it.
So is there a much greater need for emotional health and self-awareness
than
what there was.
Yes. I'm trying to think. I think boundaries, discernment, depending on what your beliefs are, a close relationship to a higher power.
Sure.
Because the things we're attaching to, comparing to, are fleeting things. They're not real.
Yeah, that's really good. I think, Shane and I on a podcast here, oftentimes we both share a faith in Christ and in a Christian environment. And so with that, we'll oftentimes talk even with young athletes that we work with about understanding their identity, and who they were created to be. Mm-hmm. And just that I've had friends that have made the National Hockey League, playing in the game of hockey, and I've lost friends that were in the National Hockey League and who took their own life. And just this, there was a relationship break and something happened, whether that was a contract, whether it was a healthy scratch, whether it was just the pressure of it, whether it was a divorce, and they just lost their identity in it all. And we lost them in this world. And so it's an important piece for us that we talk to, young and old, about identity. And, I think, like you said, there's boundaries that we need to understand when my children start to use social media or get a cell phone or different things of content, but also understanding, again, just a reminder of who they are, who they're in the process of becoming.
Well, and just with that, Justin, before we move on, because again, I talked to a lot of guys like this. I went through it a few years ago. Like, I've had that experience that you talk about of life hits, just knocks you down. And you love Rocky, I love Rocky, and you got to figure, like, are you going to get back up, right? And times you like, I don't know if I can, and you do. But a lot of guys I'm talking to now in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, they don't know how to maybe start that process or where to go. But just everybody's journey is different in that way. Was there a person, a moment where it's just like you kind of got over that hill and kind of dealt with some of your stuff that brought about that freedom?
The most aggressive moment was an ayahuasca journey. But no, I think I was gifted and cursed with this like thirst of curiosity of trying to figure out how the world works. So from like a very young age, I was always like, I'd have like, I was 8. I still remember this. I was 8 and I had this idea that like you get coins and when you die, you give a coin and you come back. And it's like you have a certain amount of coins until you learn your lesson. That was like this thought I had, like a Buddhist idea of reincarnation or whatever. And it's just like, I've always had this desire to know more, which is good, but also can cause a lot of issues with being in the present moment. It's like there's no amount of knowledge that makes you feel settled. Like you're always looking for the next sort of thing. But yeah, I just think, as life, it's similar. Like, life just happened and it keeps happening. And there's times where I feel like everything's amazing. I can't get hit backwards and I'll get hit backwards. And it's like, okay, what happened to all those things I learned? And like, I have to relearn and sort of apply them again. I don't know if that really answers your question, but there was no one very specific thing like that. Even that moment I told you, like that was one instance of like, I got super sick. I had to figure it out. When I met my wife, we met for 2 months and then she got pregnant. And that was something I had to go, like, I have many different things that happen and it's just rolling with it, because even amazing blessings, when they're completely steering you off your current course, can be a little bit of an issue to sort of integrate with.
Yeah.
So no, nothing like, not one thing. I think a lot of big life events.
It's good. Yeah. Cause I just find so many guys are on that journey and they don't know where to start. And I think it's just a willingness to just deal with it.
I think the scariest age, and I could be wrong, are men, because we're talking about men or people in general, who are in between the new and the old world, or pre and post internet. Like you're 46, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
So you remember a time that we didn't have cell phones.
90s were awesome.
Right. Life was slower. You could fit life into a box. Like, I'm going to go get a job. I'm going to make my money. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to support my family. I'm, going to enjoy my trips, enjoy my friends. And so much has shifted so quickly. And I think that's really difficult to be that in between. I think being born into this type of world is a little bit easier to deal with because you've always had Instagram and TikTok and all these different things. I think being in that like 30 to 45 year range is like, that's a hard thing to go through.
100%. And what I'm finding is, and maybe I don't know if this is your experience, guys from my generation, whether it's online, social media, whatever it is, podcasts, this constant battle of I'm not enough.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and it's just like, well, am I enough? No, like, because we can always, we're never going to be perfect, right? Like, we're always growing. But I find that over and over and over again, that's just a major challenge of just like, if you jump on Instagram, you're scrolling like, well, I'm not strong enough. I don't have enough money. I don't have a good enough job, like whatever it is.
It's the Fugazi lifestyle is so on steroids right now. Like you could, again, your parents, like their neighbors, everyone was sort of around the same financial level. They went to work. You had that one guy that everybody knew that maybe succeeded a little bit more. But now it's like, if you don't get a PJ, it's like, who are you? Because you see so many people online getting PJs, or, hey, I'm 20, I'm 25. I built a $500,000 a month business online. And then what do you do right away?
How do I do that?
Yeah, wait. Or what's the more insidious thought is like, wow, I'm just so behind all these people.
Never gonna be able to do that.
I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, I don't even know how to start.
Yeah.
And then what happens to your internal world and your mood? And then it's like, what happens to your health? And now you're starting the day off from this like negative. So like you guys talk about the Bible, like there's I don't know the verse, but the idea is like Jesus says you need to fill up on sky stuff more than anything else. So it's like, what is sky stuff? It's like emotional connections, your connection to God, like being a good person, like these things that you can't acquire through wealth, that you have to fill up, like the outside of money. Like, how do you build yourself up with people? And then the more you acquire sky stuff, that's where you're going to start feeling more fulfillment and happier. But I think now more than ever, which is why I think you're seeing such a resurgence of people going back to their faith. Like I think over the past couple of years, there's more and more people who are like getting in touch with their faith or finding faith for the first time, where it wasn't so prevalent like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Remember like the whole atheist movement, like with,
Sure.
There was that one big
Dawkins, all those guys, and new atheists, all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And now where's that? It's complete. Now the Petersons and like the William Huff and all these other guys are like getting so much traction, and they're like super faith-based people.
I love Wes Huff. He's unreal. He's Canadian, which is crazy.
Sorry. Yeah.
But it's just like, yeah, there's an openness, for lack of a better term, spirituality.
Yeah.
And there's different strands of that and all. But like, yeah, the hard atheist seems to be less of a thing because it doesn't really offer hope, and people want some hope, and so they're much more open to searching, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I think you're talking about in like the book of Matthew. I'm assuming probably the Sermon on the Mount, it's called, and there's a whole and just Jesus talking about urging you to store up treasures in heaven as opposed to earthly wealth, right? And earthly treasures. I think eternal values, that kind of thing. So. But yeah, I agree. A lot of this comes down to the hope. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Grit and Growth Podcast. We hope that you enjoyed today's guest and the answers that they were able to give and the stories they were able to tell. If you did enjoy today's episode, we'd ask that you would just follow or subscribe to our podcast. It does help us get the word out in our message. Thanks again. Have a great day.